There's been so many times that I've dealt with a patient who was a type 2 diabetic. And when I start dealing and digging into their life, as far as their lifestyle and what they're doing, I start to uncover a lot of things that have made me uncomfortable over these past 8 years. Many of them really have no idea what type 2 diabetes is. On top of that, they have no idea how they became a type 2 diabetic. And then to make it all worse, they have really no idea how to radically improve it and or reverse their type 2 diabetes. And in my opinion, this is a crime. I say it's a crime because if you take the information and give it to the right patient, which is all patients, they could potentially radically improve their life and or reverse that condition. In this video, we're going to talk about 5 things your doctor should have told you when they first diagnosed you as being a type 2 diabetic. Stay tuned. What's going on, family? This is Edward Williams, licensed physician assistant and founder and creator of Health by Any Means Necessary. And I want to welcome you to our channel where we talk about all things Black health, fasting, and insulin resistance. So if you're new around here, go ahead, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and be sure to share this video with your family and friends. All right, so let's get into the conversation. All right, so as I said in the intro, so many diabetic patients are completely unaware of the inner workings of type 2 diabetes. And when I say inner workings, I'm not talking about understanding diabetes to an endocrine level, endocrinologist level, or a doctor's level. I'm talking about understanding it as if this is your body going through a condition, a situation that you need to be able to manage it. And by manage it, I don't mean keep it in a certain level for the rest of your life. I mean, as far as ownership, this is your life, this is your body. Once it is over and done, you have to be held accountable for everything you've done with your life and your body up until that point. You can't blame anyone else outside of you for the mismanagement of your health, because whatever they said and recommended, they're making that recommendation to you, and you are the one internalizing it and taking action based on someone's outside recommendation. So it stands to reason that you need to go ahead and enlist yourself as the primary care provider for your own self. That way you now are in charge of the research, understanding how your body works, and understanding what you need to do or should be doing to improve and optimize your overall health. So when it comes to type 2 diabetes, seriously, I know so many patients, I've met so many patients that if you ask them if they understand what type 2 diabetes is, they will say, yeah. Some will say flat out, not really sure. But a decent amount will say that they understand it. And once again, any of the video and information that I'm putting out is never to wag fingers, shame, or any of those things, but it is to put it out there in a bold and blunt way so that we can now make the decision on if we want to take ownership or if we want to continue to go along the path of, pretending that we're unaware. This video is to make you aware. So back to the patients who will say that they understand type 2 diabetes. When you get into the conversation, you find out they really don't know, or that what they say they know, or what they're telling you they know about it, is completely misinformed. It's misinformed information, and they're being misled. And so this part, the initial understanding of type 2 diabetes, is not something that I necessarily put on the patient. When you were initially diagnosed as being a type 2 diabetic, meaning that you went to the doctor's office, you had labs done, the labs came back, your A1C was, if you're pre-diabetic, above a 5.6, if you're a type 2 diabetic, above a 6.4. Once a practitioner, a doctor, tells you that, ma'am, sir, you are pre-diabetic, ma'am, sir, you are diabetic, the onus, the responsibility is now on the practitioner to educate you, inform you on what type 2 diabetes is or what pre-diabetes is. what that means and how you became a type 2 diabetic and what you should do to improve it. But that's not happening in, I don't want to say many cases, but a lot of cases, way too many cases. What's being done instead is that they're asking about your family history, and they're looking for the red herring. They're looking for, you saying that your mother or father or your brother or sister is a type 2 diabetic or a pre-diabetic or they're obese. And then the connection is made, well, since they had it, then it makes sense that you now have it as well. And this is the thinking and the line of thinking of it runs in your family, which when it comes to these lifestyle conditions, mainly I'm talking about type 2 diabetes right now, but this includes high blood pressure as well. When it comes to these conditions, this does not run in your family. Type 2 diabetes is a lifestyle condition. It is a condition that was brought on based on your lifestyle, your habits. And that's one of the things we want to talk about right now in this video. But for many people, that's their first time hearing that. Their understanding of type 2 diabetes is that it runs in their family, and at a certain age, it's about that time to become diabetic. Your practitioner should have went into why you are now diabetic, the lifestyle, the habits. They should have also mainly told you that even though you are diabetic, you can improve this and you can reverse it. Then they should have told you or given you recommendations to improve and or reverse it. And then they should have scheduled a follow-up. Then, well, before they got to the follow-up part, they should have checked your temperature as far as how do you feel about this? Where are you at on this? I'm telling you what it is. I'm telling you how you got it. And I'm making recommendations on what I believe would be good for you to do. If this is a patient who is saying that I'm not trying to do all that, doc, just give me the medications, then cool. You did your job. You provided health. You're a health provider. You provided health information, and now they are making that decision as an adult to forego the information to improve it, and they now have enlisted themselves in a lifetime of medications that will only increase as time goes on. And on top of that, they have now enlisted themselves in diabetes progression, because you taking the medication doesn't stop the progression of type 2 diabetes. It will continue the progression of type 2 diabetes. The only thing about it is that you won't be as aware of it as everyone else will be. You will pretty much get a symbolic victory. You will pretty much get this comfortable blanket to keep you warm, but the winter is still coming, and you'll just kind of pretend and be snuggled up that it's not coming, but it will come. Now, if the patient says, yes, I want to avoid the ramifications and the comorbidities that come along with being diabetic, I want to avoid the medications, then this is when you now schedule them for a follow-up. You give them recommendations, then you schedule them for the follow-up. So let's go ahead and get into the 5 things that your practitioner should have told you when they initially diagnosed you with type 2 diabetes. The first one is understanding the difference between type 1 diabetes and type 2 diabetes. Once again, so many times I've had patients come in and tell me that they're diabetic, and I'm saying, okay, you're type 2 diabetic, and they're saying, no, I'm type 1. Oh wait, I think now I'm type 2. And the noun part, the transitioning from type 1 to type 2, when I hear that from a patient, I know that they don't really understand the difference between type 1 and type 2. And even if they don't make the mistake of, considering that they might be type 1 or type 2, or they're confused between the two cases, the fact that most people understand that type 1 diabetics have to depend on insulin for survival, they kind of see type 2 as a more evolved case of they kind of see type 2 as a more evolved case of type 1, which once again is not the case. Once I get done explaining this, you're going to see that type 1 and type 2 diabetes really shouldn't even be named in the same category. Diabetes should not be used for the same conditions, because they're almost 180 degrees in difference as far as the actual condition itself. Type 1 diabetes is a autoimmune condition. Now, I'm not a type 1 diabetic specialist. That is not my area. It's not something that I've given a lot of my attention to as far as studying it and understanding it. So I won't pretend to be an expert on type 1 diabetes. I am an expert when it comes to type 2 diabetes. But with type 1 diabetes, as I understand it and the information that I've been given and then the basic information that I've researched, essentially type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune condition. This is something that the person was born with. And over time, their immune system has a dysfunctional response where it starts to kill off the insulin producing cells in the pancreas called the beta cells. It starts killing off those insulin producing cells, which leads to a decrease in insulin production to the point where their pancreas is producing very little insulin or no insulin at all. And of course, this is a problem because when that person is starting to eat, when they eat that food, one of insulin's jobs, insulin has many jobs, but one of the jobs is to store nutrients, and it will store the glucose from the food. But when you don't have the insulin, you're not able to store the food, the nutrients the way you're supposed to store it. And so since the pancreas is not producing insulin or producing very little insulin, but not sufficient, and the person is eating, the body has to now go into survival mode, meaning that you now have a high blood sugar. And the blood sugar is just sitting in the bloodstream and it's not going into the cells. And so one of the things the body's going to start to do is it's going to start to send it to the kidneys to be filtered out through urine. And so this will cause a person to urinate a lot. Also, the person, usually a younger individual, so a child or a teenager or someone in their early 20s, they're usually diagnosed around this time. They'll also start to notice that it's very hard for them to gain weight, keep weight, and they keep losing weight. And so another thing that was found long time ago when they really started to name these terms, they would notice that wherever someone who is diabetic, type 1, will urinate at outside on the ground, there will also be a collection of ants around the urine as well. And that's because the sugar was literally in the urine. The glucose was literally in the urine. So it was sweet urine that the ants were attracted to, which was another telltale sign of being a type 1 diabetic. So the conditions are very different. You have a pancreas that is no longer producing sufficient amount of insulin. Because of this, this is a condition that can lead to death because they're literally they're malnourished. They're not getting the nourishment. Their cells are not able to actually absorb the glucose because the insulin is not there. So this is a condition where the person can actually die. Insulin in this case, exogenous insulin, meaning insulin that is injected into the body, is life-saving for these patients, because since they're not actually producing insulin, and we know that to be the truth, you'll check their insulin levels, you'll check their C-peptide levels, and we'll be able to verify that they truly are not producing insulin, which is different in type 2. And so since they're truly not producing insulin, injecting insulin is a life-saving treatment that will help them live a healthy life as long as they do the other healthy principles, such as eating whole foods, water, staying away from processed foods. And so that is type 1. This is not something that you can actually, type 1 diabetes is not something that you actually brought on yourself. Although there are a lot of research that points to cow milk kind of being the trigger for those who are prone to type 1, and also vitamin D deficiency being the trigger for type 1 as well. But even in those cases, someone in the family lineage was also a type 1 diabetic. But that's type 1. Now we switch over to type 2. Type 2 diabetes is 95%, and 95% is the number they keep giving out. I'm going to go as far as to say 98%, 99%, but 95% to be conservative, all lifestyle. Type 2 diabetes is all lifestyle, meaning that there were certain habits that you had in your life that created this condition. And what I mean by that, to break it down even more, is that your eating habits, based on the type of foods that you were eating, were increasing your glucose so high that your pancreas had to secrete a lot of insulin to bring that glucose down. And because you were eating so frequently and the food was so high, this is something that was lasting the majority of the day. And so your insulin levels remained high for so long that you became resistant to insulin. Why? Because insulin is a hormone that is designed to be secreted in bursts. It's not designed to be a hormone that's just sustained throughout the day. It is a burst hormone, meaning that whenever insulin is secreted, its effects are designed to last for minutes versus hours, like many of us are living right now. And so the eating is going to keep the glucose up, which is going to keep the insulin up. The drinking is going to keep the glucose up, which is going to keep the insulin up. And people are doing this several times a day, 2 to 3 hours they're eating, 6 more meals they're eating. And once again, this is advice and recommendation that they were given based from their doctors, their healthcare providers, their dietitians, their trainers. They were given this information of eating every 2 to 3 hours, 6 times a day. And this is the perfect recipe to keep your insulin levels high, making you insulin dominant, which will ultimately make you insulin resistant. Insulin resistance is the platform. It is the foundation for type 2 diabetes, prediabetes, high cholesterol, obesity, heart disease, high blood pressure. It is the foundation. You take all of those conditions and they are sitting on the foundation of insulin resistance, meaning that without insulin resistance, these conditions for the most part don't exist. And so you need to be insulin resistant as a prerequisite to be a pre-diabetic or be a type 2 diabetic or to be hypertensive. In order to be these conditions, being being insulin resistant is a prerequisite. And I hope that makes sense. And if it doesn't make sense, we definitely have other videos for you to check out called Insulin Resistance Explained, which will go through and do a fantastic job of explaining just what insulin resistance is. So insulin resistance was brought onto your life based on your lifestyle habits, the eating, the drinking, but also the lack of movement. And so if you're not moving enough, then you're just not utilizing the nutrients that are in your cells, which is making it even harder to bring down those levels, which means your pancreas needs to secrete more insulin. Now, I hope you caught the fact that when I talked about type 1 diabetes, I talked about the pancreas not having the ability to secrete insulin. That is the key component. That is the key component. And so since in type 1, the pancreas is not secreting insulin, injecting insulin is a life-saving treatment. Over here in type 2, we are talking about the dominance of insulin, being insulin dominant, the abundance of insulin being secreted from the pancreas. But don't miss the fact that the pancreas is only doing what it's doing because we are doing what we're doing, which is eating constantly, drinking constantly, and not moving. Insulin is doing its job. The pancreas is doing its job. It's doing its job based on what we are telling it to do. Whether we know we're telling it to do it or not, this is what we are telling it to do. We're telling it to constantly secrete insulin. This is going to make us insulin dominant. But the big thing is that you have insulin. If you're a type 2 diabetic, you have insulin. Now, there's this myth about the pancreas burnout. And once again, in a large percentage of those cases, the pancreas is not burnt out. What's going on with the pancreas is that it has fat infiltration. You have a fatty pancreas. And because the fat has infiltrated the organ, the pancreas, just like any other organ that has fat infiltration, you're going to have a decrease in the function of that organ. So type 1 diabetes, you don't have insulin. Therefore, injecting insulin can save your life. Type 2 diabetes, lifestyle, insulin dominance, you have insulin. So now, if you have insulin, but at the same time, you're being given medications to increase your insulin, such as the sulfonylureas, or you're actually injecting insulin. And I'm telling you, being insulin dominant is a problem because you're going to increase your resistance to insulin, and it's going to become one of those perpetual cycles where if at one point 20 units of insulin was working, you're going to get to the point where you need 30 units, and then 40 units, and then 50 units, 60, 80, 100, 120, 200. I told you in the beginning, insulin is a storage hormone. Its job is to store nutrients. But in addition to it being a storage hormone, it will also inhibit lipolysis. Lipolysis is the breakdown of fat. And so if you're constantly eating and you're constantly injecting insulin to deal with your glucose, you know what else you're doing? You're gaining more weight and you're stopping the breakdown of fat, because based on the insulin, we're instructing our bodies to hold on to the fat and gain more fat. So this is something that should have been broken down to you in the beginning. No type 2 diabetic should be confused about type 1 versus type 2 if, in my opinion, the practitioner did their job. This is something that you should have known right off the bat. Next, you did not burn out your pancreas. And I touched on this in the first thing your doctor should have told you when you were diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. But we're going to expound on what I mean by your pancreas is not burned out. Once again, so many patients tell me that, my doctor said that since my pancreas is no longer making enough insulin, I need to take this sulfonylurea that's going to punch on my pancreas to force it to secrete insulin, or I need to go ahead and just start injecting insulin. What proof did they show you that your pancreas is not producing enough insulin? What proof? Because I've been doing this for a while, and it's rare that a patient will tell me or show me evidence that they've had their insulin levels checked or they've had their C-peptide levels checked. And these are the two lab values that you need before you can make such a harsh statement that your pancreas is burned out. And I say it's harsh because if your pancreas is burned out in the mind of the patient, well, it only makes sense. I need to inject insulin or take medications that's going to force my pancreas to secrete more insulin. That's not the truth. The truth is that if you were to check your insulin level and your C-peptide level, not only would you find that you're producing insulin, but you're producing a tremendous amount of insulin that is causing your condition to become worse. It's causing you to gain weight. It's causing you to have PCOS, or if you're a male, it's causing gynecomastia and decrease in testosterone. It's also increasing the chances of you having a heart attack, a stroke. It's increasing your blood pressure. It's causing water retention. It's damaging the nerves in your peripheral extremities. Your extremities, I don't have to say peripheral, such as your toes, your fingers, the smaller blood vessels, your eyes, your kidneys. And so it is high insulin levels that you're already producing that's causing damage to the things we just listed. And on top of that, you're not going to take medications to increase your insulin levels, or you're going to take insulin injections to increase your insulin levels, all because they said you're not producing enough insulin, but at no point were you actually shown the proof that you're not producing enough insulin. So if you actually want to prove that you're not producing enough insulin, then do a fasting insulin test, or check your C-peptide along with the fasting insulin test. And that will truly tell you if you have an insulin deficiency problem. And for most people, you don't. You don't have an insulin deficiency problem. You're producing more than enough insulin. It's just that your resistance to insulin is so high that you now need to bring in exogenous insulin. Not even need to, but they're going to recommend that you bring in outside insulin. So that's the next thing that you should have been educated about when you were first diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. The next thing your doctor should have told you when you were first diagnosed with type 2 diabetes is that this could have been prevented. Why? Now, some people may think that this is a little petty to look back at the past and the history, but it's not, because you most likely have kids, or you have people in your circle, or you have nieces, nephews, but you have someone who could benefit from this information. Now, just think about how detrimental the idea or the belief is that this is something that just runs in your family. It runs in your vein, and that there's nothing you could do about it. Just think about how detrimental that is when it's not a fact. It's not the truth. The truth is that this could have been prevented. How life-changing would this be to give to your son, your daughter, your niece, your nephew, your cousin, your brother, your sister? How life-changing would it be to give this information to your family member in order to help them stop the progression on their way to becoming a diabetic? How life-changing would this be? But you will never give that information to them if you just feel that this is something that just runs in our family. Mama had it, daddy had it, my brothers and sister have it, so it only makes sense that I will now get it as well. This is learned helplessness, and this is what the system is doing. And feel how you want to feel about that statement about the system, but if you really think that I'm just coming up with this information because I'm extremely intelligent and I just did so much research. Look, I like myself. I love myself. I'm not about to make it seem like I came up with this life-changing, groundbreaking information and protocol on how to prevent and reverse type 2 diabetes. I love myself, but I'm not about to do that. The truth of the matter is that we've always known that. We've always known that. It's preventable and it's reversible. We'll get into that next. But type 2 diabetes is not something that's running in your family. If we're talking about type 1, then yes, that makes sense that there's certain things that would make you more likely to become a type 1 diabetic based on your lineage. But once again, type 1 and type 2 are very, very different. Type 1 is 1,000% preventable. You can stop it. You can stop type 1 diabetes. And going back to the first topic or the first tip, type 2 is brought on based on lifestyle. You know, if you eat the same way your mom and dad ate who are diabetics or who were diabetics, and you drink the same thing they drink, or you don't move the way they did not move, then yes, you will become diabetic, and it may look like it's just something running in your family. But the truth of the matter is that it's not just running in your family. This is something that could have been prevented based on your lifestyle. All right. The fourth thing your doctor should have told you when you were first diagnosed as being a type 2 diabetic is that it's reversible. It's reversible. So, and this is the one that I used to get a lot of pushback from back in 2014 when I started screaming through the mountaintops that, you know, high blood pressure, not only is it not a disease, but it's preventable and reversible. Type 2 diabetes, not only is it not a disease, and that's a much more advanced conversation, but it's preventable and reversible. And I was getting a lot of pushback. That pushback has decreased dramatically. I would have to say now it's decreased dramatically. Why? Because people are starting to see, oh, shoot, you know, my cousin or my aunt or someone I knew or someone I know reversed diabetes, or they got off medications. They're starting to see, you know, other doctors talk about it. And I'm so glad to see the progression coming along. But here's the thing. It was always preventable. It was always reversible. It didn't change. And we have to be very, very careful about identifying and taking information coming from the outside, coming from outside of us, where you don't know just where the integrity and the morals of that person lies. You don't know if they just see you as recurring revenue. You don't know if they just see you as a kickback. You have no idea. And this is why I say you need to be your own primary care provider. You are your first doctor. You have to take ownership of your health. You have to take ownership of your condition, because at the end of the day, you can say what you want to say as far as they told me this, they told me that, but you are the one suffering alone with the joint pain. You are the one suffering alone with the blurry vision. You are the one getting up at night over and over and over to have to go urinate. You are the one that's going through the neuropathy by yourself. You are the only one. And you will be the only one if something detrimental happens to your health and it sets you back. Like, it will only be you. And so since it's going to only be you, that means it's really truly, and I mean it in this the very sense, it's all on you. So why put so much weight into somebody that you don't really know, They are giving you cookie cutter information. They have not even shown and proven that they have a vested interest in you becoming healthier. Why would you put so much belief in their advice when they can't even answer basic questions about this condition, and they're not doing a good job of providing you with recommendations? Like, why put so much belief in that whole entire system? And that's why I say, at the end of the day, it's on you to do more digging, to do more educating, because then you will find that this thing is not as permanent as they made it seem. It's not as chronic as they told me initially. And that is the truth. The truth is that type 2 diabetes, for the majority of people, is reversible. Now, will it take time? Yeah, it's going to take time. Will it take work? Of course it's going to take work. What are you going to have to do? Well, you're going to have to do the opposite of the things that got you there, which, once again, your doctor should have told you why you are diabetic, how you became type 2 diabetic. You became type 2 diabetic because of the foods you're eating. You're eating processed foods. The processed foods are going to cause metabolic havoc. It's going to raise the glucose, which is going to cause insulin to increase, which is going to cause inflammation to increase. And then that insulin in that whole scenario is going to remain like that for hours on end, which is not a natural process. But on top of the processed foods causing metabolic havoc, it's also going to rob your body of the natural resources that it already has in order to deal with that situation, such as the magnesium, the calcium, the potassium, the sodium, the vitamin D. And this is why I call processed foods nutritional colonizers. Once again, watch the video Insulin Resistance Explained to understand what nutritional colonizers are. I'll make it very short and simple. Processed foods. The foods that come in a box, a can, the ones you're getting through a window, the ones that taste very sugary and sweet, the ones that we like the most, right? And you have to understand just how these foods, they may taste good for the moment, but they ruin your health for the long term. And you have to make a decision if that food and if that moment is worth you having to be on medications and worth you being at risk of going blind, amputation, dialysis, or heart attack. You have to figure that out for yourself. So back to why you became diabetic, the processed foods. That's why. The sugary drinks, all the drinks outside of water, just straight up herbal tea, or just straight up black coffee. Outside of those three things, the other things are likely adding sugar to your bloodstream. And your body is having to deal with that with insulin once again. And so many people, like a lot of my patients, before dealing with me, I found that they're drinking coffee around the clock. And that coffee has cream in it, sugar in it, all kinds of additives to it that's going to keep their blood sugar elevated all throughout the day, which is going to keep their insulin levels elevated all throughout the day. The sodas, the juice, I don't care just how healthy they're making out these juices and sodas. Well, nobody's making healthy sodas that I've heard of. But it doesn't matter what they're bragging about being inside of the soda or the juice, vitamin C or zinc or whatever like that. It's not healthy for you. It's not going to help out your situation if you're already insulin resistant or diabetic or pre-diabetic. And so by doing those things, that's also going to contribute to you becoming diabetic. Eating frequently, once again, that 2 to 3 hour advice and recommendation that the healthcare system and the food system in general gave you, detrimental. The perfect recipe to make you insulin resistant. The 6 small meals, perfect recipe to make you insulin resistant. The lack of movement, not working out, not walking, not having an exercise regimen. We are designed to move, and when you don't move, well, that's just stagnation is a harbinger of death. And so when you add up everything in totality, the food, the lack of movement, the frequent eating, this creates the perfect condition to become insulin resistant, which then leads to becoming a type 2 diabetic. So in order to reverse the situation, you stop doing those things. It's very straightforward and simple. but it may be hard for a lot of people to adapt that lifestyle. And so understanding that this is straightforward and simple is not the same as it being easy for someone to do. And I completely get that. But it's simple. So I want to make sure that we are aware that it is straightforward and simple. Once again, watch the video Insulin Resistance Explained to go deeper into these the habits that I'm talking about. But if the processed foods are contributing to the journey to type 2 diabetes, then you cut them out and you replace them with whole foods. If the sugary drinks, the sodas, the juices are making things worse, then you cut them out and you stick to water or herbal tea that doesn't have any kind of additive to it. And if you're a coffee drinker, then it's going to just be straight up black coffee, which I found is very hard for a lot of people who are coffee drinkers. Lack of movement. If lack of movement, which it is, contributing to type 2 diabetes, then you start moving. Doesn't mean that you need to go get a gym membership. That'll be helpful if you can afford it and if you're going to use it. But something as simple as just walking every single day around your block, utilizing the stairs at your office or your job, wherever you work, parking farther back in the parking lot during the daytime, and making yourself walk more. Doing push-ups at home, air squats. You have to move. You have to. We're designed to move. And so just sitting all day and not doing anything that's going to cause adversity, positive adversity for our muscles, or that's going to increase our heart rate, get the blood pumping and get us breathing deep, that is going to add to us becoming a diabetic. So you have to do these things, okay? You have to do these things. So, and also the frequent eating. Eating around the clock is definitely going to contribute to you becoming insulin resistant, which is going to make you type 2 diabetic. Therefore, stop eating so frequently. Just stop it. It's not necessary. The idea that you're going to starve, where'd you get that idea from? You have to ask yourself, because once again, these are the uncomfortable conversations that we have to have with ourselves and with the community at large. Where did you get the idea that you're going to starve? Ask yourself that. The idea that you have to eat 2 to 3 hours in order to regulate your blood sugar. Where did you get that idea from? You're trying to tell me that if you were not living in this society called America, where you have food on demand, you're trying to tell me that if you were anywhere else, that you would just die if you weren't able to eat every 2 to 3 hours? Then how's everybody else doing? How are the people who are actually truly really facing food shortages surviving longer without type 2 diabetes? And the people who have the foods are saying that they can't go without the foods while also being insulin resistant and diabetic. Think about where you got that information from, and when you follow the breadcrumbs, you're going to see that it comes from the food industry. It comes from the same associations that actually benefit from you being sick. Whether you like it or not, you have a whole entire system benefiting from our ignorance, meaning our lack of knowledge about a certain subject, benefiting from our suffering, meaning that we're dealing with the side effects, we're dealing with the complications, and they're benefiting from us being compliant to the advice that doesn't work. And we're committed to the food that the same system is improving. You got to look at the word FDA. I didn't make this up. It's called Food Drug Administration. We're talking about the same administration that's going to approve the foods that you're going to see on the shelf that's going to ultimately make you sick when you continuously eat them, which will send you to your doctor, who will then prescribe you medication that was also approved by the FDA. And it's a hustle. It's a perfect hustle as far as perfect being making money wise, but that extracts out the morals and the ethics. But you have to understand that they don't like you like that. And I've been saying this for a long time, nor should you even be concerned about them liking you like that. They've shown their hands, they've shown their cards, and it's up to us now to take ownership, accountability, to do what we need to do for ourselves, but also for our family members, and pull them out of that system and pull them out of that thinking, because it is this thinking that has us looking and thinking that it just runs in our family. This is like a generational curse. We just have high blood pressure. We're just diabetic. That's just how things are. No, that is not how things are. You have to get outside of that thinking that causes that perpetual cycle. So I hope that makes sense. Type 2 diabetes is reversible. To wrap up with the frequent eating, stop eating so much, stop eating so frequently. It's not a requirement. Stop thinking that you have to manually regulate your blood sugar. Your liver does that. You're not a liver. You have a liver, but you're not a liver. You really think that your body's not intelligent enough to regulate your blood sugar? I mean, I'm sitting here, and we all can do this, but I'm sitting here, I'm speaking with you, I'm blinking my eyes, I'm breathing, I'm wiggling my toes, I'm watching out at the peripheral of my vision to see if anything is going on. I'm thinking about my next thought. I'm doing all these things without really consciously trying to do it. I'm just doing it. And all of us can do this. You walk and you chew gum and you breathe while you're doing that and you're stabilizing yourself. You're trying to tell me that the very same body that can do all of those things at one time without you constantly trying to make it do it, all of a sudden is like clumsy when it comes to trying to balance your blood sugar? Come on. Just think about the foolishness that has been taught to us when it comes to these conditions. And that foolishness has been taught to us and given to us because it benefits them. It benefits their bottom line at the end of the day. And many of us, unfortunately, are part of that revenue that's being generated. So if you want to get out of that game, stop eating so frequently. Fast. Make your last meal at 6 p.m. at night. Don't eat anything until noon. You won't die. It won't kill you. Start moving more. Walk around your block. Do some push-ups. Do some jumping jacks. Just move more. Eat whole foods. The processed foods, they're not doing anything for you. They're just making you sicker. Eat processed foods. Get more greens. Eat some kale, spinach. Make a green smoothie. Drink water. Put away the soda and the juice. Pour it down the drain. Get rid of it. It's not doing anything beneficial for you. This is how you're going to reverse type 2 diabetes. And this is how you're going to stop the progression of type 2 diabetes. So I hope that makes sense. Number 5, the last thing that your doctor should have told you when you were initially diagnosed as being a type 2 diabetic is that medications don't work. Definitely get a lot of pushback with this one. But I'm ready for the smoke and I'm with the shits. So you have to understand that there's been multiple studies when it comes to type 2 diabetes, but also high blood pressure. VDAT, V-A-D-T, Accord. We're talking about studies that have shown people being compliant to medications, and other studies where people have been that have been regulating their glucose very tightly. So tight diabetes management. We have studies that show that you can take the medications, you can be as compliant as you want to be, and you can be as aggressive as you want to be with the medications as far as keeping blood sugar in a tight range. The overall outcome as pertains to the complications, which are blindness, kidney disease leading to dialysis, stiffening of the arteries, which leads to strokes, high blood pressure, heart attack, neuropathy, gangrene, amputations, all of those things. You can be as strict as you want to, but it does not take you out of the race to leading down that road of complications when it comes to diabetes. Why? Because the medications don't do anything for the foundational reason you are diabetic. The medications does not stop you from eating processed foods. The medications will not stop you from drinking sugary drinks. The medications will not make you get up and start walking or exercising. The medications will not stop you from eating around the clock. They don't do that. And that is the reason you are a type 2 diabetic. The medications give you a symbolic victory. The medications will make you feel good while dying inside. The medications will cause your doctor to give you a high five while you are suffering and silently dealing with erectile dysfunction and PCOS. All while these folks are showing that, hey, your labs are looking good. Your A1C is where it needs to be. Now, did you gain 50 pounds from the insulin that we gave you? Yeah, lose weight. Did you have to go to the hospital because your blood sugar went too low because of the sulfonylurea we gave you? Yeah, but that's part of the game. But look at your numbers. They're normal. So your numbers are showing a normal value or an improved value. But what is your true value as it pertains to health? You feel like crap, or you're tired of taking all the medications. You're tired of being limited, and you're tired of depending on the medications themselves. These medications will not take you out of the race of dealing with the complications that people who are non-medicated but still living that same lifestyle are at risk of. So the person not taking any medications but still living the processed food lifestyle is on the same path, or you are on the same path as the person who is taking the medications but has not made the changes to your food, your drinks, your movement, your fasting. If you don't make those changes, both of you are heading down the same road. The only thing is that you're unaware, or you're pretending to be unaware. You're allowed to pretend to be unaware. The person who is not taking the medications, they know what they're doing. They know that they're at risk. They see it when they check their blood sugar. They see it when they look at their watch. All the signs and symptoms are there. They're constantly waking up at night to go pee. They see the dark lines on their neck. They're missing menstrual cycles. They're dealing with erectile dysfunction. They're dealing with the gynecomastia. They're dealing with the lack of energy. They're dealing with the blurriness of the vision. They're dealing with all of those things. They are very much aware that what they're doing as far as their lifestyle is causing these problems to happen. On the other side, that person can continue to do the same thing. But as far as their awareness, they're now allowed. They've been approved to ignore the complications, or ignore the issues, or pretend that they're not happening because you're taking the medications, where when we check your finger stick, it looks good. When we check your A1C, it looks good. You're doing better. The blurry vision, we might just have to send you to an ophthalmologist, but everything looks good. The high insulin level is still causing stiffening of your arteries. Your blood pressure is only looking normal because you're taking the medication. Your blood sugar is only looking normal because you're taking the medication. And the medications will eventually get to the point where it's not enough. And what's going to happen? They're going to add on more medications. And so the medication that's being used to help out with your diabetes will now start to increase your cholesterol, and you're going to start to take muscle medications for that. And that medication will now start to cause muscle pain, and you will have to start taking medications for that. And then that medication will cause erectile dysfunction, and you will have to take medication for that. And that medication is going to cause your blood pressure to even go up even higher. You have to take and so it becomes this perpetual cycle of medications on top of medications. And you get to a point where you have no idea anymore what's really going on. You have no idea what's really true. You don't know, because there's so many different hands in the pot that we've created a situation where nothing makes sense anymore. We're just taking medications. We have a whole tackle box of medications, and nothing makes sense anymore as far as why it's going on and what I need to do about it. That is what that journey will take you. It's going to take you down that road, and it's also going to cause frustration, because you may still experience a lot of the symptoms and a lot of the signs and a lot of the comorbidities that people who are not taking medications. You may find yourself still becoming sicker. You may find yourself with a lower immunity. You may still find yourself gaining a lot of weight. You may still find yourself, unfortunately having a heart attack. All the things that you were trying to prevent are still on the table, even though you're taking medication, because the medications will not deal with the core reason for you being diabetic. I hope you understand that. I hope you understand that. And this is the conversation that someone should have had with you when you were diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, because the things that come behind being a type 2 diabetic are life-changing. And so a good, hard, solid 30-minute talk or 15-minute talk, or something where, look, this is what comes with type 2 diabetes. If you want to go down that road, then keep doing what you're doing. If you don't want to go down that road, then here's what I recommend. You as an adult, you have to now make the decision. All right, family, that wraps up this conversation. I know I went on for a while, but this was unscripted. And I just wanted to talk to you all bluntly and openly about the things that you shouldn't have known already about type 2 diabetes. And I just see so often most people don't have that information. They're completely unaware of that. So I wanted to make sure I did my part to at least create a video that you all can share with your family members, to really understand what being a type 2 diabetic will lead to, and also the things you can do to prevent it and also reverse it. And I wanted to make it in an open conversation format because it's one of those conversations where I just need to go. All right. So I hope this benefits you. Please be sure to subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed to the channel. Like the video, share the video with your family members. Make sure your family, your circle understands what being a type 2 diabetic really is and what it means and what it leads to and how they can stop all of that. Make sure they understand that. Once again, make sure you watch the video, Insulin Resistance Explained. Now, if you're someone who wants to just go ahead and get started on trying to improve your type 2 diabetic situation, be sure to check out our free resource called the Diabetic Toolkit. This is a free resource where you enter your email and it's going to give you access to a page where I have my blood glucose tracker, and I teach you about how you should go about tracking your blood sugar for reversal, not management, reversal. Also, I go through and I explain what type 2 diabetes is. I also have a video where I explain A1C, the HbA1c, what that is and how it works and how to reverse it, how to get it down lower within 30 to 90 days. So be sure to check out that resource. However, if you want to go ahead and just get started with getting the value and getting everything that you need to know to reverse the condition, improve the condition, be sure to check out my brand new book called Done with Diabetes, 5 Simple Strategies to Prevent Diabetes and Reverse Diabetes in 90 Days. Make sure you check out that book. It's a dope book. When you buy the book, you also get the audiobook for free, and you also get the bonus pack for free as well. And then lastly, if you want to actually have a do-it-yourself program that guides you through what you need to be doing on a daily basis to prevent diabetes and reverse diabetes, then be sure to sign up for the Done with Diabetes 6-point action plan. This is a video course that comes with a workbook where I walk you through the daily habits and the recommendations on what you need to be doing on a daily basis to reverse type 2 diabetes. This is something that I use with my patients, I use with my clients, and it's been working. I have a 90% success rate as pertains to reversing type 2 diabetes. So I highly recommend all of the resources, but I particularly recommend the Done with Diabetes book and also the Done with Diabetes 6-point action plan, which is a program where you walk through step by step. All right. So this is your brother, Edward Williams, signing off. And remember, this is our community, our responsibility. We have what it takes to radically improve our conditions, but we just got to put in the work. All right. Love y'all. Appreciate y'all. Peace.